One man out in the forest with his dog would have a terrifying encounter with an alien being that would forever change his life. After knocking the creature unconscious, he would decide to take it home with him. But before he was able to take any of this public, the government supposedly broke into his house and stole most of the evidence. They then began to discredit him and even kill his friends. But is this actually how everything went down? Now that it's many years later, let's look into all of the details and facts that have since surfaced about this case. While researching and writing these cases, I try to stay as unbiased as possible, and just give you all the information so you can make your own decision. With that said, let's look into depth on both sides of this fairly controversial case. We start this story with a man named Dr. Jonathan Reed. Not much is known about this man, other than he claims that his uncle and aunt are his only family, and that he worked for the University of Washington. He also claimed to have a PhD in child psychology. He was out on a hiking trail one day with a 7-year-old golden retriever, Susie. This trail was about an hour east of Seattle, Washington, near the Snoqualmie Pass. It was an October afternoon at about 3 p.m. After about 30 minutes of hiking, Susie suddenly rushed over a ridge and disappeared from sight. Soon she began to frantically bark, growing louder as Reed approached. Thinking that she might just be in a fight with a wild animal, he grabbed a large branch and rushed over. But as he got to the top of the rise, he could once again see his dog, and it appeared that she had a strange child-sized creature's arm in her mouth. The creature was shaking violently, almost vibrating, and moving its arms at an incredible speed trying to get the dog off of it. Reed yelled at Susie to let her go, and she obeyed. But then in a flash, the creature reached out and grabbed Susie by the snout and ripped her head in half. It then seemed like Susie started to get sucked into the wound, soon disappearing into nothing but a white powder. The creature then turned and looked right at Reed with an expression filled with pure rage, before looking back towards Susie's fading body. Reed took this moment to run towards the creature and strike it with the branch as hard as he could. He knocked it back a few feet, with the creature crumpling to the ground. It appeared to be dead at this point and was bleeding everywhere. Then the reality of the situation began to sink in, and Jonathan became overcome with shock. He began to feel sick and decided to sit on the forest floor and just try to regain his sanity. After a while, he finally calmed down and remembered that he actually had a camera back in his Jeep and ran off to go grab it. He came back and began to take a few pictures of the creature, but he soon began to hear a strange, low-frequency humming sound coming from further into the forest. Reed soon came across a small, black, bizarre, craft-like object hovering above the ground. Later on, he would refer to this object as the obelisk. He points out that it seems a bit asymmetrical, and looked to be about 9.5 feet long and had rounded edges. In person, he said that the texture looked very stone-like. The object also seemed to absorb all sound within its vicinity, while also causing some distortion with the camera. When walking closer, it felt as if the air was filled with a dense static. He tried to clear some of the vegetation with his branch, but said it was like swinging it through molasses. The closer he came to this strange object, the more harmonious and pleasant the distorted humming sound became. Reed would reach out to touch it, but found it to be incredibly cold. It would end up burning his hand, and he later compared it to a dry ice burn. At first he tried to hide the body, planning to come back for it later. He still felt ill and decided to rest for a bit longer though. After several hours, he just decided to take the alien corpse back home with him, wrapping it up in a survival blanket and throwing it in the back of his Jeep. But as he was moving the body, he would come across a strange golden bracelet, and he would later come to call this the Link device or the Link artifact. He wasn't sure what it was at this time, but thought it may have been a control for the obelisk or maybe some kind of tracker for the alien. He took that with him as well and started to make the drive back towards Seattle. As soon as he got home, he decided to place the body into the freezer in an attempt to preserve it. He tried to call up some of his friends to tell them about what happened, but oddly it seemed that none were home. Still not feeling well, he soon decided to go to bed for the night and worry about it in the morning. The next day, a friend of Reed's, only known as Gary, would come out to his house, and the two would examine the body together. This is when the video of the creature wrapped in the thermal blanket would originally be filmed. He would note that the creature was only about 4 feet tall and weighed about 50 pounds. It was wearing a skin-tight, one-piece black suit that covered the entire body up to the neck. However, the material around the soles of the feet did seem a little stiffer and more thick compared to the rest. The skin appeared to be dense and hairless, and although it appeared to be a pinkish blue color originally, it started to turn into a brown color after it was wounded and stuck into the freezer. It also had mitten-like hands with only 3 fingers. It didn't seem to have any sexual organs either. Reed attempted to cut away the suit, but claims that it repaired itself, and would soon grab onto the scalpel and made it impossible for him to cut it at all. Reed and Gary would even say that they went back out to the woods to search for the obelisk, but were surprised to see it had vanished. And the scene of the incident was back in pristine condition as if nothing had ever even happened there. Over the next few days, both Jonathan and Gary would be contacted by various agencies, all attempting to find a way to deal with the alien body. Soon strange cars were following them everywhere. Reed was then contacted by another agency, who would then threaten him with his life if he were to ever come out with any information regarding this alien encounter. Reed would say that they looked to have official-looking badges, but never knew what any of these organizations actually were. That same day, Gary would make an anonymous call to the National UFO Reporting Center, and said that he spoke to the director, Peter B. Davenport. He asked vague questions about what would happen if somebody had an alien body in a freezer, just to see how they may react to information like this. But it seems they both may have said too much already, as the next day, Reed would find himself out of a job, and told that he had never worked there to begin with. Shortly after this, while he and Gary were driving one day, they claimed that a car tried to force them off the road and they nearly crashed. Then, 4 days after this encounter all began, Jonathan started to hear strange sounds coming from inside of the freezer. He opened it, and to his shock, he said that the alien appeared to still be alive. In a panic, he threw the lid back down and called Gary over to take a look with him. Together, they opened it up again, and the creature now looked right at them and started screaming.
It's okay. It's okay. It's alright. I'm not gonna move. Okay? No one is gonna hurt you. I'm trying to get some help. But I don't know what you want. Make me understand. No! No! It's too much. Please, stop! I'm just going to pick this up. I'm just going to pick it up. I'm going to leave. It's okay. It's alright. I'm going to go. It's alright. I'm going to turn it off.
Reed says that after this, the next few days were spent learning about the creature, and they were eventually able to communicate with it. At one point during this communication, he even experienced some kind of dimensional shift. He would also try to get this alien to eat and drink, but it would always refuse. And it oddly seemed to like being in the cold and preferred to stay in the freezer most of the time. 9 days after all of this started, he would come home one day to find a number of cars and vans parked outside of his house. He decided to just keep driving and come back later. When he finally returned home, he would find the entire place ransacked. The garage door was now broken and laid off to the side. The freezer and the alien were now gone. Most of the original pictures and videos were gone at this point too, but he was able to find one film negative and the link device. Fortunately, he had sent many of the copies to a couple of friends on the internet, so he was able to get them once again, but how exactly is unknown. He claims that he went to one friend's house to get the material, but he would end up finding her dead on the floor with no signs of the alien video anywhere. And it seems that sometime later on, he would find somebody else that he had sent it to, but unfortunately, after sending it on the 1996 internet, the quality had become much more degraded. Deciding to run for their lives, both Gary and Reed met up with somebody only referred to as Professor X from the Alliance. And the Alliance was apparently an underground, loosely knit coalition of people who would help hide people in situations such as Reed's. It seems that Gary would distance himself from Reed at this point and wouldn't make contact for quite some time. While on the run, Reed claims to have been constantly harassed by the same government agents that had killed his friend. During this time, he claims to have been beaten up, shot at multiple times, and was even homeless and living in an abandoned building. At one point, he says he was even shot in the shoulder, and later even showed a picture of his wound. But after 2 years of running, he decided to go public with his story anyways. On November 11th, 1998, he would appear for the famous Coast to Coast AM show with Art Bell. During this show, a friend named Robert Wraith would accompany Reed, and it seems that he was there to help him keep his story straight because it was such an emotional topic for him. Reed would also have on Larry Arthur, his landlord, who saw the aftermath of the government ransack and gave a few more details on all that. Reed and Wraith would continue making appearances on several more Coast to Coast episodes as well. In the second appearance, they would show off the Link artifact, with Reed saying that it attaches to the wrists and allows the user to transport to another dimension. In later episodes, he would ask for help publishing a book, detailing his entire experience. And it's said that at least 5 different publishers would contact him after this broadcasting as well. In another episode, they would have on a microbiologist, Dr. Harold Chacon, who said he was from the Pontifical Catholic University of Puerto Rico. Here, they would discuss tissue samples. It seems that Gary had managed to hide a few samples away before mailing them to Reed after hearing him on the show. The doctor would say that under a microscope, the black biologic material looked like metallic plant cells, guessing that this was from the self-repairing suit. In the same episode, Reed would also state that Dr. Roger Haggett, a pathology professor for UW, and a public health research chemist, Michael Wessels, were murdered for their alleged involvement in analyzing Reed's alien tissue and blood. In another episode, they would also claim to have had the negatives of the film inspected by Kodak's own people, with a representative from the company claiming that they were authentic. Art Bell would even say, "So you can know that whatever it is, it was not manipulated in a computer. These are original Kodak photographs of an alien encounter." Soon, Reed was claiming that Dr. Chacon was beaten up and forced out of the country after this broadcast went public. But soon, he would even be invited to the International UFO Congress as well as the San Diego UFO Society. Next, he would even make a website selling his book and video presentations and even reenactments of Reed's encounter. Then he would be invited onto the Mexican variety talk show called El Toro Rolo, in which he once again shared the story of his encounter. Around now, he would also show slowed down clips of his video as well, and some of these would seem to show what appeared to be the alien blinking, among a couple of other things. And it would seem that while he was in Mexico, he would come into contact with Jaime Maussan, and here the two would investigate the Link artifact even more. They soon claimed that it must still be powered on as it emits bursts of radiation. Apparently, it could not be penetrated by X-rays either. They would state that it was without a question of extraterrestrial origin. At one point, Jonathan even appeared on TV with this device, claiming that he was going to demonstrate it in front of a live audience.
This is what so many people have tried to say doesn't exist. This is what I found in the forest in 1996. It has 3 needles on the inside that actually penetrate your arm, the wearer of this, that I think creates a biological interface with the device and or the beings who use it. My impression of it is that it's designed to keep control and communication between the extraterrestrial and their superiors. I believe it fits on your arm, the wearer's arm, like this. If you push down, the needles penetrate your skin, tissue, and into the nerves of your arm. There is some pain to it, but it quickly goes away. It becomes kind of a cold, almost a frozen type feeling. Very quickly that pain subsides, but if it functions, which sometimes it doesn't, it starts a throbbing inside your chest, literally a pulsation inside your chest that starts from the center and emanates to your extremities. When that happens, then it starts to be activated by, there, now I can feel it. I can feel it in my chest. It's painful. And then they make the decision whether
and it seems that from here on out, he would leave the Link artifact with Masan for safekeeping. Now Reed was going around both the US and Mexico, speaking at many different events. He even now started to refer to the alien creature as Freddie, claiming that they were still in contact with each other. He said that now he's had hundreds of encounters and met many different alien races, even more powerful ones that are in charge of things on a galactic scale. He would also start to bring in an investigator, Dan McAvoy, to some of the speeches, and he was said to have been a UFO researcher for over 18 years. Dan would claim that he personally interviewed Reed's former universities, university colleagues, students, professors, relatives, and in all interviewed over 30 alleged witnesses who all told him who Dr. Reed was. But it is important to note that he would never name any of these people. While touring around, Reed would come to learn that his friend Gary had passed away from HIV. Although not talking much more about the subject, it would seem that Reed may have been unaware that his friend was ill to begin with. But either way, he continued to go to different meetings and events to tell the world of his encounter. Many other researchers would come forward at this time as well, all claiming to completely believe in Reed's case. Several different MUFON agents around the country made it known that they had also investigated Reed's videos and believed them all to be authentic. For example, Sean Atlanti, a MUFON investigator for the San Diego UFO Society, would say, "I have been researching UFO/ET phenomenon for over 20 years, and after meeting with Dr. Reed, hearing his staggering story, and after seeing the alien photographs and video evidence for myself, truly it is one of the most fascinating and incredible contact events that I have ever experienced." Independent researchers would also come forward, showing how this case had many comparisons with other alien encounters as well. But with all that said, not all researchers are on Dr. Reed's side. Over the years that he was telling his story, multiple different investigators would find problems with some of the claims he was making. Some would even reach out to talk to him, but Reed would normally just give the same statement, saying that the dark government somehow got rid of all of his records and discredited him. Now, the first thing that many researchers want to investigate is the person out there making the claims to begin with. But after several different extensive searches, no one could really find anything about Dr. Jonathan Reed at all. From his book, many previously known details about Reed have become known. For example, he claimed to have worked at Johns Hopkins University with physician Dr. Frank Oskey in 1979. But right away, this is an issue, as Dr. Oskey didn't arrive there until 6 years later in 1985. But at this time, Reed claims that he was working on the other side of the country at UCLA. Contacting the school, MUFON investigator Dr. Haley would be told that no one by that name had ever worked there. Thinking that it may have been a mistake, she called the psychology department directly, but would be told that there were no records for that name at all. After this, remembering that he had a PhD and that he must have a dissertation, she began to search that database for it as well. But unfortunately, she didn't have any luck there as well, only pulling up a message saying that nothing was available. Moving on, she called the University of Washington to see if she could even find any records of employment there, but again came up empty. Then soon, a man claiming to recognize Jonathan Reed from the online videos would come forward with claims of his own. Bill Werner, a resident of Washington for over 30 years, would contact the media saying that he knew Reed by a completely different name altogether. He even had pictures with him as well. He said that he had known him for nearly 20 years, stating, "There was my old friend Jonathan, the co-best man at my wedding in 1994, the world-famous child psychiatrist, the collector of modern art, the mastermind behind a top-secret computer encryption code which NASA forced him to squash." Except, this guy was calling himself Jonathan Reed. You see, I knew him for all these years as Dr. Jonathan Rudder. During the time that Werner knew Jonathan, he was even told that he was working the graveyard shift developing treatment and therapy plans for different children. He would tell him many other things about himself as well, such as stating that he had dual citizenship with the US and Switzerland. Or other things, such as how his first wife, who was 4 months pregnant, died in a plane crash. And although Werner thought that the hours were weird for a physician and thought that the story of his past wife sounded a bit dramatic, he had no reason not to believe any of this. And it seems that Werner got to know him quite well over the years, and would provide researchers with even more details into his past. He would say that as far as he knew, Jonathan was actually allergic to dogs, and hadn't had one since he was a kid. He added that he quite liked the X-Files, and would always listen to Coast to Coast. He even claims that Jonathan would write short stories about aliens as well, although none of these ever quite got to the publishing stage. Countering this, Reed produced his own photo of him as a child with a dog, but with that said, it's pretty terrible quality and it's impossible to know if that's really him or not. It seems that Jonathan was dating a woman named Barb, and Werner was a co-worker and friend of hers. One night, Barb found a note made out to another woman and had a huge argument with Jonathan. Deciding that she needed to vent, she went over to talk with Werner. He said that he began to get really suspicious when, during this vent, Barb told him about how Jonathan was spending over $4,000 a month, but couldn't show any proof that he actually worked anywhere. Werner, deciding to look into this for her, found that he had taken out 15 different credit cards in different names, such as J. Bradley Rudder, Dr. J. B. Rudder, John B. Rudder, and even a few with Rattray. Looking into his past in general, he would find out that his backstory didn't seem to be true either, saying, "I found out that Johnny's first wife was not killed in a plane crash while 4 months pregnant. Indeed, she was alive and well in California, and that he was not a holder of dual Swiss-US citizenship." In the end, Werner couldn't even find any records of him having attended college, let alone getting a PhD. When the two outed Jonathan about all this, his only excuse was that he got sued and lost everything. His malpractice insurance wouldn't cover it for some reason, so he was forced to take out the credit cards to pay off the debt. But Barb didn't like this answer and kicked him out of the house. Another mutual friend of theirs would come forward around this time as well, a man named Jim Smith, who had also seen the alien footage on the internet. He also said that he knew Reed as Rudder, and that his mother-in-law lived across the street from him and Barb. Smith said, "I know it's him because of these pictures of him on the internet and his four-wheel drive, whatever that thing is he drove. I'll testify in a court of law that I know who he is." Apparently, when Jonathan got kicked out, he immediately went across the street and got Smith's mother-in-law, who was 80 at the time, to agree to let him stay there. At first, Smith didn't think too much of this, until he heard why Barb had broke it off with him. It was then that he became worried that Jonathan was just lying about everything, and that he was only using his mother-in-law as a source of money. He claims that soon Jonathan was even trying to get power of attorney over her, and that was when he decided to hire a private investigator for himself. This investigator couldn't find any school records or credentials either. He also couldn't show that Jonathan had ever even worked for a doctor, only seeing him go to a car garage during his late-night jobs. He took all of this info to his mother-in-law, but she still didn't believe him until they called the hospital together. This was the hospital he told the mother-in-law that he was working at, but when they called, they said no one by that name ever worked there. Soon, she kicked Jonathan out as well. When trying to contact Barb herself, she would refuse to speak with anyone about this man at all, only having a family member say that she wasn't interested. We do know that they were together though, as Werner would produce a couple of photos from his wedding day where Jonathan and Barb can be seen together. Looking into these photos more, it was noticed that Barb had 2 daughters there as well. Thinking that they must know Jonathan, they would also be contacted. One would respond too, Denise Chevette, the youngest daughter. When she was shown the videos involving the alien, she would immediately say that the man in them was Jonathan Rudder. She recognized him easily, saying that they had lived together for several years when she was young, and she still thought of him as her father. She would also get investigators in contact with Barb's sisters, Joanne and Laura Graves, who had more photos and more details to add to much of this. They would show Jonathan playing with the kids during a Thanksgiving dinner at Chevette's house. What's more, as these were taken just a little more than a month after the alien encounter, it seems that he showed up to Christmas dinner as well. Joanne would make other claims too, saying that he wrote sci-fi stories and even dressed up her son as an alien one day while playing with him. They would all agree that he never had a dog either, and all thought that he was allergic to most animals. They never once saw him hike either, with Charvette saying, I tried for the longest time to get him and my mom to go camping or anything like that with me, and it would never happen. If it wasn't at the Hilton or whatever, he wasn't there. Laura would also show pictures taken later on showing Jonathan at her son's wedding in September 1997. She would point out that he even looks to be wearing the same jacket in one of the alien clips. They would state that it never seemed like he was on the run from anything and lived in the area for 30 years straight. After all this came out, investigators began to question every little detail known about the man claiming to be Jonathan Reed and his alien case. They would look into the claim that Kodak had authenticated the photos, and soon contacted them. They were told that they did look at the negatives and agreed that they were authentic, but never once said that they didn't show any computer-generated images or anything like that. Just that the film itself hadn't been tampered with. They would also comment that the film that the images were taken on wasn't actually put onto the market, though, until February 1997, months after the encounter. Countering this, Reed said that they were all copies and soon produced the originals. But even film experts didn't believe them to be the originals. When copies are made of this type of film, they usually appear darker, but in this case, the copies appear lighter, suggesting that the opposite is true. That the film segments he originally showed were the originals taken, and not copies. Wanting to look into the Link artifact, researchers would try to track it down, but would be unable to do so. They would even try to contact Musan, but were only told by his assistants that a lab in Japan had done the analysis, and they wouldn't be allowing anyone else to do another anytime soon. They would try to find a report of this analysis, but could never find the Japan facility they kept referencing. Looking into the Jeep Jonathan claimed to have owned and drove during the encounter, they would find that it was actually owned by his ex-girlfriend Barb, even coming across the bill of sale. Adding on to this, investigators would even find that it hadn't been purchased until 1997. Warner would add that it never seemed like he had a car of his own, always driving a different one, and it never seemed like he would leave the cars at his house, either. This led many to believe that he may have just been working for the auto shop the PI had seen him at before. Around this time, it would also be found out that Jonathan had actually owned some kind of film shop as well, but not much more is known about this as it seems to have gone under pretty quickly. When others asked around the area that Jonathan lived in, it seems that several others would recognize him in the videos as well. Investigators even tried to track down the aunt and uncle Jonathan claimed were his only family, and were surprised to find that his siblings and parents were alive and well, all living in the Seattle area nearby. But unfortunately, none of them were willing or interested in talking with the investigators. And it's not just Jonathan either. Soon the others that had spoken with him on Coast to Coast, as well as the other events, would start to be recognized in other places as well. Dr. Holly, the previously mentioned Seattle MUFON agent, thought she recognized the man who first appeared on the show with Jonathan, Robert Wraith, the man that claimed to be a writer and friend of Jonathan. But soon he would be tracked down to a local Chevron gas station where a man named Robert Area worked at a cash register. Dr. Haley said, "When Wraith saw me, he took off like a chicken shit. I know it was him." Surprisingly, this wasn't the only familiar face she would see either. Another worker present at this gas station, a man named Harold, would soon be recognized as Dr. Chakan, the microbiologist who was supposedly beaten up and ran out of the country. She knew that a microbiologist probably wouldn't be working at a gas station, but double-checked anyway. She would find that not only was there no record of him ever being a doctor, she would also find out that the school he claimed to have gone to didn't even offer a microbiology degree. Looking into Jonathan's other friends, they would find that Dan McAvoy, the investigator that spoke at many of the events, didn't seem to have much of a background in ufology at all. The only thing UFO related that he could even be tracked back to was one event where he was a volunteer for a CUFO table at a random conference. Larry Arthur, Jonathan's old landlord, would also be looked into. And according to other mutual acquaintances, they were actually just friends, and it seems that Larry didn't actually own any rental properties at all. They would also look into the call that Gary was said to have made to the director of the National UFO Reporting Center as well. And after just a few questions, Davenport made it clear that he did not remember any conversation involving an alien in a freezer or anything like that. They would also just try to look into the people that Jonathan just claimed to have had contact with as well, such as Gary, Dr. Haggett, and Michael Wessels. No one would ever be able to find a man named Gary that died from HIV and knew Jonathan at all. Looking at Dr. Haggett, it was quickly found that he died when an upset intern shot him to death after finding out that he was being expelled from the program. As for chemist Michael Wessels, it was found that he died when he fell from a cliff face that he was climbing up one day. The mysterious Professor X would also be searched for from the details given in Jonathan's book. He wrote that this professor was a world-renowned astrophysicist and an astronomer, as well as someone that died in Seattle in 1996. This immediately makes everyone think that he must have been referring to Carl Sagan, but now that he's passed away, it's impossible to actually confirm any of this with him. Other investigators would also try to contact Jonathan's manager and attempt to analyze the original footage, but no one was ever successful in actually acquiring it. But going off of the videos available online, many can still point out certain details that aren't obvious at first glance. For one, the trauma on the back of the alien skull doesn't appear to be a wound made by blunt force trauma. If it was hit hard on the head, you would expect to see the skull caved in. It's not clear why it's broken outwards. Others would point out that there really wasn't even that much blood on the thermal blanket either, which is strange after seeing that wound. People also have a problem with the neck. Although Jonathan moves the whole head around, the body just stiffly comes with it as if it's all one piece. The black outfit doesn't seem to be as tight-fitting as he described either, looking to be more like a turtleneck in many scenes. Some even think that a button and a pin is even visible during a few frames. When other researchers tried to enhance the videos, they would only find something concerning about the alien's flesh as well. There looked to be pins running through the skin, possibly holding the entire thing together. In one frame, some even point out that it appears that on the far back side of the neck, the material making up the body seems to be ripping. In the pictures of the obelisk, many point out that there appear to be small pixel holes along the edges. And although others state that the plants in front of the craft actually prove these images are real, that really just comes down to people saying that it would be too complicated to do yourself in the late 90s. Others would mention the photos of Jonathan after he was supposedly shot, and how they really didn't look right either. They would point out that a gunshot wound should just have one entrance and exit, but 4 holes are visible. Many would expect a wound like that to be a lot more gory as well. Over the years, many researchers and organizations that originally believed in the Reed case have pulled a full 180, now saying that much more evidence is needed to support any of his claims. All of MUFON would mark it down as a hoax, and even his local Seattle group suggested that Jonathan should come out and apologize to the public. Other members even added that the people that bought his book or videos should be asking for their money back. And although Jonathan claims that all of his books and videos cost a lot of money to make, others have pointed out that he more than made his money back on all of it. Art Bell would also later comment about this case, saying that he merely presents the information and lets his listeners decide what's real and what's not for themselves. But even now that most people have changed their minds, some still believe the footage is authentic. People continue to make comparisons with newer cases as well, such as the Nazca mummies or the Siberian alien in the snow. But with that said, both of those cases are pretty controversial on their own as well. For example, 2 young men admitted to making the Siberian alien out of clay, bread, and chicken skin, but many still believe in that case's validity as well. In the end, it all comes down to the theory that most alien encounters like these are somehow being covered up by the government or other more underground organizations. But this is something that is really hard to prove either way, and it would mean that the government was able to make all of his records disappear, make all of these people recognize him as Jonathan Rudder, doctor old photos of him at his stepkid's house and at weddings, while he was supposed to be on the run, as well as ransack his house and kill off his friends, all while leaving no proof of ever doing any of this, or even having one person change their mind and speak out about it later on. It seems that Jonathan was able to ride out his popularity in the US for several years before moving on to Mexico. There he would appear on many different shows, as well as at speaking events, all discussing his encounter. This would last until around 2008, when it seems that he started to lose popularity there as well. After this, it was said that he spoke at various events, but the crowds would never be the same. Since then, Dr. Jonathan Reed has started to slowly fade away. It seems that most people view the entire case as a hoax at this point, and don't really want anything to do with him. He is still around, but he doesn't make nearly as many appearances. Even his website selling his book, videos, and tickets to his events seems to no longer work. In the end, whether or not it was all a hoax, he made a lot of money off of all this, which doesn't help his image either. Even now, almost 27 years later, he never would come forward with any new proof to support any of his old claims. There was a lot to unpack on this case, and I gotta say I look at it a bit differently after doing all this research. But as always, thank you all for watching. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you like this type of content. This show's also available in podcast form too, if audio format's more your thing. Be sure to leave a comment. I'm always interested in what you all think about these topics as well. For those of you wanting to show your support, and believe me, I appreciate all the support I can get, be sure to check out my Patreon or my channel membership page where you can get these videos early and ad-free. With that said, extra shout out to my Patreon subscribers. This was Matt, and I want to believe, but we don't have to believe everything.